All righty. So we're really lucky today to talk with Erin White. Erin's a longtime web maker, UXer, and information architect with a prodigious career in transforming digital systems for governmental agencies, including a major university library system. And about 6 years ago, Erin wrote a piece offering much needed guidance to folks who are building digital spaces on how to be sure they were welcoming to trans and non-binary people. And Erin has been a guiding light to the community ever since. So we're really grateful that they can join us today and help us be aware of our design practices and update us on the field. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you. That was a very sweet and kind intro that I was not anticipating. So I'm a
Oh,
little
okay. All
little
right.
verklempt. So thank you.
Well
Appreciate
deserved.
that.
So start us off, Erin. I know that your piece covers a lot of territory, but can you share with us maybe a set of guiding principles or guidelines that tech folks should have front of mind as they're building inclusive spaces, and particularly social spaces?
Yeah, and I think the piece covers a lot of territory because I'm a generalist at heart. And I think and care about a lot of different things. But I think the thing I want to highlight, which a lot of my colleagues here today would get excited about, is accessibility. So I've been really lucky to work with some really talented practitioners in the civic tech space over the past couple of years, um, which really prioritizes accessibility at the very beginning of all the processes. So rather than it being an afterthought or a checklist or just like a, capital C compliance thing that a lot of organizations tend to do, it's part of the design process and it's part of the design system. It's just baked in from the very front. So we're seeing this becoming more of a thing, but I think um, the more time you work upfront on accessibility, the less time you're going to spend at the end trying to fix weird design problems that have sprung up because you didn't design with accessibility in mind from the beginning. Um, so that includes thinking about folks using different devices in different contexts, different connection speeds, different assistive technologies, even like different font sizes or zoom sizes. So one of the things I've enjoyed teaching my friends to do recently is to change the font size on their phones. You can make that font bigger, everyone. It doesn't have to be that small. I've changed a couple of lives that way. Um, but I think part of that also is keeping your tech stack light, so not having such bloated like web pages or using a ton of JavaScript files or things that take forever to load. Because that's the kind of stuff that, if you think of designing for like a 4-year-old Android phone on a cruddy kind of 3G connection where someone may be paying by the megabyte for their bandwidth, like that's what you really want to design for, and then start from there. So I think accessibility and optimization are kind of one big one. Um, the next thing I would really think about is designing for trust and safety and privacy, which again is like a lot of this stuff isn't like trans specific. It's more just like inclusive, thoughtful design for folks who maybe are not living in, who are maybe in a minoritized group. So we want to help folks be able to protect their privacy, to understand like if you're asking for data, why you're asking for it. So, for example, like if you're asking for my gender, number one, why? Like, what do you need this for? How is this going to help me use this product? Um, and if you are using this just to sell to like data brokers, just tell me. Just be like, hey, we're using this to help advertisers. Like, you know, don't say it's going to help me. Um, So yeah, making that the data like clear why you're collecting what you're collecting. Let people be able to like take it with them if they want to remove it permanently, um, and to be able to know who can see their if they're making social posts or comments or sharing information, who's going to be able to see it and who's going to be able to access it through data mining or through a search engine. in addition to who might be. So like I'll use Blue Sky as an example. So I'm new to Blue Sky. I'm a fan. Pretty cool. Um, but there are some things about the privacy where I'm like, I kind of don't know if this is, it has a discourage search engine setting, but if search engines don't follow that guidance, does that mean that like my posts on Blue Sky about like the Fast and the Furious movie franchise are gonna like make it out onto the open web? So it's a bit of a tangent, but um, so yeah, having that clarity on privacy and security. And then being able to like let people limit what they're able to see, or if they don't want to engage with content that has certain words or phrases, if they don't want to engage with humans who have said something that is not okay. Um, and I have a lot of notes here. I'm just sort of riffing
Yeah.
through. Code of conduct, just letting people know what's acceptable behavior and what's not. And then actually enforcing it, having like a reporting mechanism. And like I know we've got at least one person here who worked in content moderation, and that is like, God bless the people doing that work around content moderation, around like community norm enforcement, because that is not easy work and it's really heavy. Especially nowadays. I just feel like things are really tough for everyone.
What I really like about all of these guiding principles is that they do seem universal, right? It's really respecting the individual. So privacy, transparency, giving people agency to control what they can see. And I really like your guidance on just simply giving people information of why we're collecting this information, why we are doing this practice. So you don't have to leave any mystery there. You mentioned already that you've already seen a lot of platforms move more in the direction and thinking about accessibility at the front end rather than as an afterthought. So it sounds like you've seen some kind of progress in the field. Can you talk a little bit more since, you wrote this piece in 2019? What have you seen that continues to be failures on platforms that really pops out to you? Yeah, so and where is their progress in trans inclusive design?
Yeah. It's been a pretty heartbreaking past few months, actually, because we've seen so much progress in the past 5 or 6 years in terms of just like trans inclusion writ large in at least in the US and US society, and more organizations using more inclusive patterns for collecting information about gender or asking about pronouns. And that's been really great, but I've seen that rolled back. We've seen the US web design system has rescinded its previously inclusive pattern for asking for gender after the executive order that came out in January. So instead of asking for gender, it's asking for quote unquote biological birth sex, which is another like long hour-long topic we could go into, which I won't. Um, but watching that go from a um, a 5 option answer to a 2 option answer to go to like a binary choice literally is really heartbreaking and also a reflection of the culture that we're in, the wider culture around um, um, how trans folks are being perceived and um, acted towards by our governments and some citizens. So yeah, I would say the rollback is one thing, and also just generally folks asking for gender or pronouns when it's gratuitous, when it's not needed, or when it's only needed for them to be able to make a likely incorrect inference about your interests or what you might want to do. So, um, and also seeing things like, filling out a form and asking for a thing like a title. I see this a lot in fundraising when people want to be really respectful and use a title, but it's like it's everything is on the list except for the gender inclusive MX option. So I have been using Reverend a lot as my title instead of misgendering myself. My wife is doctor, which she loves. She's a cisgender woman and she despises Mrs. and Ms. as salutations, and she has a PhD, so she's doctor. Um, but yeah, I'd say the gratuitous use of gendered form fields when they're actually not needed. Um,
And that's a great reminder too. A lot of research projects and people have like the demographic questions and they just kind of throw them all in without really thinking about like, do we need this information? Are we really gonna? So it's a great reminder of just, um, uh, asking when the information is really salient and important. So now, of course, we can't have any discussion these days without asking about AI. So any additional concerns that come up there, or anything, that kind of adds to what we should be thinking about as we do design?
I was back channeling with a friend about this yesterday because I was like, oh, they're gonna ask about AI. We got a lot of thoughts about this, but I'm gonna start with an anecdote, which is that I went to see a book talk by Oliver Hameson, who wrote a book called Trans Technologies. It just came out in the past couple of years. It's from MIT Press and it's available to read free open access online. Um, but at this book talk, he was like, trans people in general do not like AI, especially non-binary people. And I was like, I feel so validated because AI so frequently, and this is a critique we hear from scholars, from Black and brown women scholars, from trans and queer scholars, like all the time, which is that AI is a bias machine. It's a garbage in, garbage out situation where when your corpus that you're working with is biased, and you're working with an algorithm that tends to skew towards the norm, which is there really such thing as normal? Debatable. That means that folks who are not normal um, are left out. There was a study that was also released recently from some Stanford scholars, and they called it omission, subordination, and stereotyping were the three harms there for folks with um, with race, gender, or sexual orientation that were different from white, cisgender, or straight. So lots of feels there. I'm sure it looks like there's some folks in the chat who are like, yes, plus one.
Yeah, you're going to be quoted. Do you give permission to be quoted publicly
Sure.
on that? Or
Can't
actually,
spell bias without AI.
um,
Oh, it's
thanks
true.
for that. And so last question that I will ask Erin, and then we'll open it up so folks can ask questions. So if you want to start formulating yours. So we at PDN, we just talked about, we believe a lot in connecting research to practice and having research informed practice and practice informed research, importantly. So Erin, any questions that you think researchers should be looking to, investigating, trying to answer to in the realm of trans inclusive design?
Yeah, I think researchers should continue to evaluate how, if we're going to continue to use AI models, how they can account for the diversity of lived experience that exists in this world without perpetuating a norm that can harm individuals who don't meet that criteria. Um, I really think we could think more about trustworthiness and like safety in design. There's been some good work on it, but I think really continuing to learn how we can make digital spaces where folks feel that they can be there and what they're saying is safe without worrying about being Zoom bombed or being doxxed or being having the information up here elsewhere on the internet without their knowledge. And then, okay, I think the final sort of like galaxy brain thing is thinking about rather than trans inclusive design, trans informed design. So like how can the very idea of transness, right? Crossing boundaries, um, liminality, non-binary thinking, like how does that expand our thinking about like not only what we design, but the the products that we're creating. So like not only how we design, what we design. Thinking in terms of like not radio buttons, but checkboxes or like text areas or how can we sort of like blow up our thinking in a way that really allows for folks to have their full selves expressed and to see themselves fully in what we're building.
Well, thank you for using a great demonstration of the term galaxy brain, which I learned from the New York Times crossword puzzle just this week. And that's a perfect example of what you just offered. So we're going to wrap up there and move to the Q&A. So I'll stop the recording.